That's a bare minimum kind of solution as far as I'm concerned. Personally, I think we should pass laws banning companies from wiping out entire categories of jobs in favor of AI. Even if your name isn't Joe Biden, it's still very easy to forget pretty much everything the Biden administration attempted to do during their 4 years in office. It's one of those administrations that everybody, regardless of party affiliation, wants to wipe from memory as soon as possible. Biden was obviously a historic failure, whose only legacy, if you can even call it that, is employing operatives who hunted down and jailed the political opponents of the Democrat Party. But especially if you're a young person right now and you're trying to buy your first home and take part in a foundational component of the American dream, it's important to take a step back and consider very carefully what the Biden administration attempted to do. At every turn, the Biden White House took pains to make homeownership more challenging and more expensive for American citizens. In retrospect, you could make the case that this was, in fact, the primary goal of the Biden administration. Every major policy proposal, every executive action, regardless of how it was advertised, was in reality geared towards raising the cost of homeownership, among other things. It's not an academic exercise to make this point now, even though the Biden administration is out of power. It's actually extremely important because, first of all, we have to reverse what the Biden administration did. And secondly, when conservatives are crafting their own rules to make it easier to own a home, they can't emulate the Biden administration's proposals in any way. But at the moment, that appears to be what's happening. The Trump administration is going down the same road as the Biden administration, whether they realize it or not, and they need to reverse course immediately unless we want to see everyone under the age of 40 vote for Democrats in next year's midterms. So we'll start with this headline from the Biden era, which sounds like it can't possibly be real, but it is. This is a direct quote from ABC News. Quote, "Why having good credit could cost you more on a home mortgage. In some cases, people with better credit scores may pay more in fees, while those with lower credit scores will pay less. The Biden administration's stated purpose behind making these changes is to help make it easier for borrowers who have historically been disadvantaged and have a hard time accessing credits." Now, in practical terms, the proposal would penalize anybody with a credit score above 680 with an additional fee of roughly $40 a month. So you get penalized for having better credit. That's the idea. And if you put down a large down payment between 15 and 20%, then you pay an even larger fee. And the goal, according to the government, was to redistribute funds to reduce the interest rates paid by less qualified buyers. Now, at the time, the story was covered as an effort by the Biden administration to buy votes, which it clearly was. But the other effect of this proposal, of course, was to make it more difficult for Americans to buy homes. I mean, this is a zero-sum proposal we're talking about. People were being punished for doing the right thing and saving up and being financially disciplined to buy a home. They're being punished for that in the form of additional fees. They deliberately made housing more difficult to obtain, and they made it more difficult to obtain precisely for the people who should be obtaining it, for those who are financially responsible, have good credit, have saved some money. So precisely for that group. And indeed, this was nothing new for the Democrats. The Obama administration famously filed lawsuits against various suburbs, including Westchester, New York, for failing to construct low-income, high-density housing complexes inside their suburbs. They wanted to tear down suburban homes and replace them with apartments, essentially, and they went to court to do it. Now, coincidentally enough, all of these policies, and many more like them, coincidentally, were very beneficial for America's rapidly growing population of illegal aliens. If you live in a suburb that's suddenly been overtaken by rapid demographic change, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. At precisely the same time that Americans are struggling more than ever to own their own homes, it's never been easier for illegal aliens to buy property without putting anything down. The solution is not to double down on these Biden-era proposals and make it even easier to put people inside houses that they can't actually afford. Democrats pushed those policies because they needed a place to put all their new voters, and in doing so, they raised prices for everybody else. But Republicans have no reason to emulate that strategy. We elected them to make housing more affordable for Americans, to make life more affordable for Americans. As we briefly discussed the other day, the Trump administration, his current policy proposal is not going to succeed in accomplishing that objective, to put it mildly. Instead, in an interview with Fox's Laura Ingraham, the president seemed extremely cavalier about the introduction of the new 50-year mortgages idea, which would be a catastrophically bad idea in about a million different ways. According to Politico, what happened is that the federal housing director, Bill Pulte, who also serves as the chair of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, showed up at Palm Beach Golf Club with a 3x5 poster board in his hands. And the poster board, as you can see here, showed a graphic of former President Franklin Roosevelt below the words 30-year mortgage, along with a picture of Trump below the words 50-year mortgage. And the headline on the poster board was Great American Presidents. And then 10 minutes later, as the story goes, Trump posted that image on Truth Social. So that's how you lobby the president, apparently. Make sure you have poster board. But in speaking to Laura Ingraham, it didn't appear that the president fully understood the implications of this proposal. He also seemed to be under the impression that people are currently getting 40-year mortgages, which obviously is not true. Watch this.
Housing costs are still out of reach. And another thing that your administration, many Americans, the average age of first-time home buyers are now up to age 40, which is sad. The country you and I grew up in.
I inherited that. Look, you have to understand.
Right, but let me get to the question, though, because your housing director has proposed something that has enraged your MAGA friends, which is this 50-year mortgage idea. So a significant MAGA backlash, calling it a giveaway to the banks and simply prolonging the time it would take for Americans to own a home outright. Is that really a good idea?
It's not even a big deal. I mean, you go from 40 to 50 years. And what it means is 50, you pay something less from 30 that some people had a 40 and then now they have a 50. All it means is you pay less per month. You pay it over a longer period of time. It's not like a big factor. It might help a little bit. But the problem was that Biden did this. He increased the interest rates. And I have a lousy Fed person who's going to be gone in a few months.
Now, this is one of those clips that even if you're mostly a very strong supporter of what this administration is doing, as I am, I think they've done a lot of great stuff, you simply cannot allow this to stand, and because it's a horrible idea and it will hurt the country. Not to mention it will hurt Trump politically, which is a secondary concern. But of course, the political concerns are also real concerns. And as we'll see in a second, there was at least one more clip from this interview along these lines that is very problematic, which we'll talk about. This was a very strange interview, and nobody on the right voted for any of this stuff. But before we address that, let's talk about the reality of a 50-year mortgage, because contrary to what you just heard, it is indeed a very big deal, and it's also a very, very bad deal. If you take out a $400,000 mortgage and you choose a 50-year, and you go with the 50-year option, right? The difference in your monthly payment is probably going to be around $150 a month. Okay, that's it. That is the quote savings that you're getting, $150 a month. Well, which $150 a month, if you can take, you might think, well, better to save $150 a month than not save it. That's real money. Okay, fine. But the problem is that over the extra 20 years, you're going to spend roughly $500,000, yes, $500,000 in extra interest payments. So that's in the extra part of it. You're going to spend 2 decades doing nothing but paying off the bank. And if you don't make it that far, which you probably won't, then the bank gets your house. Now keep in mind, as we just heard, average age of first-time homebuyers, 40 years old. 50-year mortgage, well, if you don't make it to 90, then you're never going to own your home. Miss a couple of payments and everything is gone. All of that to save $150 a month. And if you want to sell your home at any point, the 50-year mortgage is going to cause a lot of problems there as well. After 10 years of making payments, you'll have less than $20,000 in equity in your home. So just say that again, in case you missed it. After 10 years of making every payment, you will have less than $20,000 in equity. You might even be underwater on the loan. Meanwhile, with a normal 30-year mortgage, you'd have nearly $60,000 in equity. So these are massive, massive differences for a very small monthly savings, which is not really a savings because you're spending more. Ultimately, it's more expensive. You're basically renting the property instead of owning it. So why are we hearing something like this from the Trump administration? It's indistinguishable from a proposal that the Biden administration might suggest as a way of getting more illegal aliens into more homes. What we should be hearing from the president is very different. He should acknowledge that any American adult who works a full-time job and fulfills their basic adult responsibilities should be able to own a home. Now, it's not that anyone has a, quote, right to home ownership per se. Home ownership, unlike, say, free speech rights, is a thing you have to work to achieve, okay? So no sane person thinks that we should just, like, give out housing to everybody, regardless of, here you go, you all get houses. There are plenty of people who've made proposals like that, and they're insane. So that's not what we're talking about. But you should be able to achieve that. Home ownership should be achievable for most competent working adults in a healthy and thriving country. And it used to be in this country. And if our country is failing to provide that opportunity, then the solution is not to turn more Americans into de facto renters. It's not to make them, more Americans into, vassals of the banking system. A much better idea, one that will actually lower the prices of homes, is to, as we talked about a couple days ago, deport all of the tens of millions of foreigners who are here illegally and taking up housing that should go to Americans. A lot of housing. Give America back to Americans. How about 50 million deportations instead of 50-year mortgages? Better yet, how about a 50-year immigration moratorium? How about we hear a single sentence, just one single sentence from this administration about the fact that, as we so often talk about on this show, Somalis are now so entrenched in this country that they're playing out tribal feuds in municipal elections. What do you think 100,000 Somalis have done for the housing prices in Minneapolis? That's not a rhetorical question. Like, someone needs to answer this. But as far as I know, nobody in the White House has. So here's my best guess. Okay, so let's just use Minneapolis as an example, as a microcosm. The problem's obviously much bigger than this, but let's just use Minneapolis, okay? And just the Somali, they've got a lot more immigrants in Minneapolis than just the Somalis, but let's just use this one example. Minneapolis has 430,000 people. Let's say 5% are Somali, which is a lowball estimate. And let's assume that these 20,000 Somalis occupy around 5,000 rental units and 700 homes, and the rest are homeless, which, again, is a very lowball estimate. So just using these numbers for the sake of argument here. Getting rid of all the Somalis, even given these very generous assumptions, would double the rental vacancy rate in Minneapolis from 7% to 15% citywide. Lease prices would plummet, allowing young adults to save a lot more money much faster to buy a home of their own. Median rents would drop like a rock. And meanwhile, for homeowners, the median prices of a home would drop by around $30,000. And this is just from deporting one group of third worlders in one city. And this is an actual, tangible result that the administration could get to work on right away. They could end Somalia's temporary protected status, denaturalize and deport as many as they can, and then they could get to work on every other large population of foreign nationals in this country. It's obviously worth a try at a minimum. But as far as I could tell, this administration hasn't done anything on that front. The president has joked about deporting Ilhan Omar. The administration has gone out of its way to limit their immigration enforcement to illegal aliens who also have extensive criminal records. And those illegal aliens we should get out of the country if they have criminal records, but also all of the rest of them we should get out of the country too, because all of the rest of them don't belong here. They're not Americans. They're not citizens. They committed a crime by coming, and they're a drain on the system, and and when it comes to housing, they are taking up housing, like millions of units of housing that don't belong to them and that should go to Americans. Now, in the meantime, the housing market isn't just dire, it's historically bad. In 2000, the median home buyer was around 40 years old. Now he's 61 years old. And the number of first-time home buyers is now down to 21% of all home sales, when it was double that number back in 2005. Private equity firms and institutional real estate investors are buying something like 33% of all single-family homes as of the second quarter of this year. That's the highest percentage in the last 5 years. And if you look at this data from the National Association for Realtors, you'll see where the problem for first-time home buyers began in earnest. And as you can see, the median age of first-time home buyers, which is indicated by the yellow line, began spiking very sharply in 2020. And you probably remember what was going on in 2020. We had the COVID lockdowns, massive government stimulus spending to keep the economy afloat. The money was flowing like a fire hose. And there wasn't any sober, rational analysis going on. They were just pumping out the money. People were getting thousands of dollars in the mail. You may remember back 5 years ago, if you stood up and said, hey, I don't know if we should be doing this, you were shouted down by, almost everyone. And tens of thousands of fraudulent businesses were established to collect on emergency loans. And at the same time, the Fed also cut interest rates to near zero. So the government directly contributed to the high price of homes that we're seeing right now. Stands to reason the government can take action to reduce the price of homes. It's like you created the problem, maybe you could fix it. Lower interest rates are part of the solution. Cutting any kind of discretionary spending is another. But Republicans aren't really doing that. They just voted to fully fund the SNAP program, which, as we've discussed previously, is an even bigger fraud than the COVID paycheck protection program. Whenever they have an opportunity to actually lower prices on housing, Republicans aren't doing it. And the president in this interview didn't seem interested in helping to address the problem either. At one point, he stated that we need foreign migration into this country because Americans don't have the skills to perform jobs that are necessary. Watch.
H-1B visa thing will not be a big priority for your administration, because if you want to raise wages for American workers, you can't flood the country with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of foreign workers.
You also do have to bring in talent.
We have plenty of talented people here.
No, you don't.
We don't have talented people here?
No, you don't have certain talents, and people have to learn. You can't take people off an unemployment line and say, I'm going to put you into a factory where we're going to make missiles, or I'm going to put
How did we ever do it before?
I think we have plenty of highly skilled and talented people in this country. I also think that it's undeniable that we don't have as many as we should, because the public school system has been an abject, disastrous failure for decades now. So it is true. Is there a problem with having sort of not enough people who are competent and skilled and all that? Well, yeah, when you've got a public school system that's a total, absolute failure in every respect, then it's going to have a lot of downstream consequences, and this is one of them. The solution, though, is not to flood the market with foreigners. If Trump is right about American workers not having the skills, then that's all the more reason to cut off the H-1B program and train up actual Americans. Because America is for Americans, as provocative as that idea may be. At the very least, the absolute minimum, the president should be explaining in detail what he's doing to stop the abuse of the H-1B system and the rampant fraud that's involved, which is so flagrant that everybody in the technology industry talks about it all the time. He should tell us how he's drastically scaling back the number of H-1Bs, the vast majority of whom are not, in fact, working in highly technical or specialized fields. That's the other thing that's not mentioned by Trump very often in this conversation. We're pretending that these are all highly technical, very specialized. That is not the case. And again, this is the bare minimum. And personally, I'd like to see the program abolished entirely. So I'm talking about bare minimum. Right now, there are accounts on X that are exclusively devoted to exposing how various large companies, including Nextdoor, are defrauding the H-1B system by posting job advertisements on random, no-name online job boards. Here's just one example of what these ads look like, which you can see right there. Basically, so to hire H-1Bs, this is the way it works. A company needs to show that they made a good faith effort to hire Americans first. So and this is something people that defend the H-1B program, they'll point this out. They'll say that, well, you're only using that if you can't find any Americans to do these jobs. Oh, really? Is that the case? Well, how does that work in practice? What they do is they post an ad on one of these job boards, which are not like real. They get no responses because there's no one looking at the board, and then they claim that Americans weren't interested. You know, it's like they walked into an empty forest and said, "Hey, anybody want this job?" No? Okay, well, I guess we got to hire someone from India. That's the way it goes. So keep in mind, Nextdoor could have listed this job on their official openings website, but they didn't. This is a practice that's obviously worth a few criminal investigations, but as of now, only a few X accounts seem interested in stopping it, which needs to change. All of those steps, in the end, would reduce the competition for housing in this country, especially in high-demand areas like Northern California and parts of Texas. And they are actual useful steps and not Band-Aids that will actually make the problem worse, like a 50-year mortgage. The best thing you could say about a 50-year mortgage is that at best it is a Band-Aid solution. But it's like a Band-Aid that you put on a deep gash on an artery where you're just like bleeding out, and you put a Band-Aid on it, and maybe that will help for about 10 seconds, and then you're going to die. So, this is a basic supply and demand thing. Also, not to jump on my anti-AI soapbox again, but we should probably put in some regulations in place before AI wipes out millions of jobs and makes home ownership or owning anything else impossible for millions more Americans. So if we're talking about actual solutions, this is also a thing that needs to happen. I don't care how sick people may be of hearing me say it. Well, you're going to hear me say it a lot more because this is the issue of the future. And this is coming. What started as an idea is now the podcast and business blasting through your earbuds. Launching your own business is pretty much on everybody's bucket list, but most people let it collect dust right next to learn a language and get abs. Stop hiding behind lame excuses like, I don't have the skills, I can't do it alone. Turn those what ifs into bold why nots with Shopify backing your ideas. They've got the tools, you just need to take the chance. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US. We even use it for our own Daily Wire shop to make sure things are running smoothly and efficiently so you can all get the goods. You might be asking, what if I can't design a website, or I'm worried people haven't heard of my brand? Well, not a problem. Shopify has got you covered from the start with beautiful, ready-to-go templates that match your brand style and help you find your customers through easy-to-run email and social media campaigns. And if you need a hand with everyday tasks, their AI tools created specifically for commerce can help enhance product images, write descriptions, and more. Plus, their award-winning customer support is available 24/7 to share advice if you ever get stuck. Turn those dreams into and give them the best shot of success with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/Walsh. Go to shopify.com/Walsh, shopify.com/Walsh. Out of curiosity, I went to ChatGPT, figured, go right to the source, and just asked ChatGPT to estimate how many jobs it will erase, like AI. Ask AI how many jobs AI will eliminate in the next 10 years. And it estimated up to 15%, which is about 25 million jobs lost. Now, that strikes me as quite conservative. But even just 15% is catastrophic. I'm not sure how our society can absorb those losses without causing a full-scale collapse. Does anyone know? Does anyone know how we're going to do this? How's this going to work? What happens in the next few years? You got 25 million people who don't have jobs, on top of the ones who already don't have them. Entire industries, from transportation to consulting and everything in between, are going to be decimated. I mean, what are the millions of truckers and secretaries and customer support representatives and accountants and lawyers and consultants and everyone else going to do when AI can easily replace them? 2 decades ago, a book was published entitled Who Owns the Future? And it's one of the few serious explorations of this question that I've seen, even though it didn't deal with AI explicitly. And it's worth a read for that reason alone. The author, Jaron Lanier, proposes that people should be compensated for contributing to various online economies and free services like Facebook and Google and helping to train their various algorithms. So if an AI uses your posts on Reddit for training data or your Facebook arguments or whatever, then you get royalties. And this is even more. Now with AI, like all it's doing is plagiarizing all the time. Every time you ask AI anything and it gives you an answer, it's just plagiarizing it. And if you ask it to generate something, create something, then it's not creating anything, it's just plagiarizing it from somebody else. Now, if AI is truly going to generate trillions in revenue, then these payouts would be trivial for the companies and potentially life-saving for everybody else. I mean, that's one thing. That's one idea. There are other solutions too. Elon Musk has proposed that when his robo-taxis go live with nobody in the driver's seat, Uber drivers will be able to manage entire fleets of taxis and make money that way. Although, again, bare minimum. That's a bare minimum kind of solution as far as I'm concerned. Personally, I think we should pass laws banning companies from wiping out entire categories of jobs in favor of AI. That's what I think we should be doing. We should be looking at legislation saying you can't do this. You cannot just wipe out tens of millions of jobs. Our society you can't do it. It's going to destroy society. That's why you can't do it. Now, that's the sort of thing that makes free market conservatives like me very uncomfortable. But we're at a moment in history when we have to choose between doing things that make us uncomfortable or allowing millions of people, millions at a time, to lose their jobs and their livelihoods and any chance of owning a home or experiencing anything like the American dream, ever. So you have to do something. You can't just sit back and let it happen. And the bottom line is that the Trump administration needs to be talking about solutions like this. I'm not pretending I have all the solutions. I certainly don't. I also wasn't elected to come up with the solutions. The people we did elect need to start talking about this stuff. What are we going to do about this? People can't buy homes. They're not able to live in homes. It's going to get worse. There are people who are in industries right now, they already can't afford a home. They are being actively replaced by algorithms as we speak. It's going to get worse. What are you going to do about it? There's almost nobody in a position of power offering any solutions at all. They're not even trying. It's not enough to try to just Band-Aid over the problem. We need solutions. What are we going to do about this? Now, politically, there's simply no other option. Like, the conservative movement has to seriously address these kinds of problems. The entire movement will be left in the dust if we don't work on ways to actually improve Americans' lives and address the real challenges they face every day. The only point of any of this, the only point of politics or economics or anything, the only point of anything that we talk about on the show every day, the only point of anything that any of us talk about is or should be to see to the well-being of American citizens. All of our systems should serve exactly one purpose, and one purpose only, which is to help our citizens live good lives. That is the only point of any of it. Anything that does not serve that purpose is bad or useless. Anything that does serve that purpose is good. It's pretty simple. I'm very simple, and it's as simple as that. You've got an idea, okay, does it improve people's lives? If the answer is no, it makes it worse, it's a bad idea. We shouldn't do it. That's it. We should not do it. There's not any, but it does this. Well, I don't care what else it does. It actively harms Americans. We shouldn't do it. Period. Now, this is not socialism we're talking about. Socialism, in fact, is bad precisely because of this, because it does not enhance the well-being of the citizenry, but instead it makes their lives worse by every metric. That's how we know socialism is bad. And this is the metric. This is the thing we should be focused on. It's why the homeownership issue is obviously crucially important. It's why our leaders, speaking again from a political perspective, even though the politics are a secondary concern. I mean, when it comes to homeownership, the main concern is like people need homes. and they need to be able to live in homes, and they need to be able to experience homeownership. But from a political perspective, our leaders in the conservative movement need to take this on and need to take this seriously. Like, so much of the conversation on the right has been about foreign policy, global affairs. Meanwhile, the average American is wondering if he'll ever be able to buy a house, and if the industry he works in will still exist 5 years from now. The average American is sitting there thinking, like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do with my life 5 years from now? Those are very real concerns. I mean, they're the most important concerns that a country can face. And if Republicans don't want to address them, then another party, the party that openly seeks to destroy civilization itself, will do it for them. And do it in the worst ways, with the worst answers. But one thing we've learned is this: people with bad answers always beat the people with no answers. So what are your answers? If you'd like to see what else I have to say, you can access my full show by going to dailywire.com or by going to the Matt Walsh Show Twitter page. Hope to see you there. Godspeed.